Call this meeting to order. Let's go right into the approval of the consent agenda. Has anybody got any questions on the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Doris?
The bleachers at Smyrna, the school will pay for part of it. A request for us to pay for part of it. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, actually, I think we approved it last time, but the school pays for half and the boosters picks up the other half.
Yeah. We're not responsible for any of it.
But how does that relate to the bigger bleachers you want? Is this just replacing a section, or what is it?
Yeah, this is just an aluminum section in it for the baseball field or something, in lieu of what we were originally requesting were, tie on to the end of the other bleachers. Although I think we originally bid it or priced it at concrete and also aluminum. I'm talking about the football field, didn't we, Gary?
Yes, sir. That's the football field. This is baseball.
I know, but I'm just trying to answer Dr. Bush.
What he's doing is moving some, the bleachers that are existing, he's making some bigger ones and moving some into the soccer field, isn't he?
Yeah, if you recall, we poured a lot of money into fixing, not a lot of money, but we poured a considerable amount into fixing the soccer field where it's playable. He's taking those down there and moving these out there.
Any other questions on the consent agenda?
Lawn care.
Lawn care.
Told you somebody to ask about that, didn't I? Yes, sir.
Well, I've just turned over here and looked toward him.
What we did on that, we bid it where one vendor has the north end and the other the south end, because we found out they've been pretty much overwhelmed with respect to the amount done. Now, the lowest price vendor for the south end happened to be the same guy that got the north end, and he's a little bit cheaper than Boggs, wasn't he, Gary?
Yes, sir. As Mr. Gill said, we've had trouble for them performing both ends of the county, so we split it up. They can only get one end, so we have to take the lowest bidder on that particular end. In this case, there's only 3 bidders because we required a bond this year. What was the question? Was there another question?
Yeah, I was looking at, I'm looking at the tab. And
I've got it here. Bob actually put a price, or Gadco actually put a price in on the south end too, and really they were just asked to bid on equal or.
okay.
They weren't supposed to turn a bid in on both of them actually.
So,
And we don't let them have both sections because we've gotten in trouble so many times when they would be mowing on the north end, south end would be growing like crazy down
it's a lot to do. What, you said 3 bid, what?
There's only 2 on there, and that was successful. There was another bidder that was actually able to bond, and I don't have it written down here. A&R line service. And he was on the north section, he was 127.5. And we're just not confident that he can handle it.
So that's, these 2 are the ones that you think, that you've worked with them before?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Both of them?
And and we've actually gotten into trouble before where it cost us more.
Yeah.
Or bid at the end to just try to get everything done up.
I remember the days, Mr. Gill, when we used to bid our own schools, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? If there's not, I need to back up and ask if there's any questions on the agenda itself. I went right by that one. Any on that? Okay. Let's go on down, Mr. Gill, to was it 10?
Old business, I guess.
Old business, yeah. Okay. Discussion on Eagleville School classrooms and auditorium additions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'm asking the board to discuss and consider moving on the Eagleville addition. We had Mrs. Holton here several months ago, and she discussed and gave us the reasons why the auditorium and classrooms are needed. I appreciate Mr. Gill and Mr. Clardy bringing out the renditions of the structure of the additions, and of course they've done quite a bit of legwork. The community out there have expressed the need also. Eagleville's Mayor Toon and I went and sat with Mayor Burgess just to get his input, and he also expressed that he saw the need for it, and that he also thought that the addition could be accomplished without impacting the tax rate, which I thought was encouraging. And I hope it's something that we can do. I know the commission in the past has been favorable to additions, and this is a much smaller project than so many of our construction projects here over the last few years. Would certainly hope that the time is right at this time to begin this and to let this middle school and high school have an auditorium. Also, we have 14 portables at the at the smallest population high school in the county, and this really would help get a portion, if not all, those students back inside a bricks and mortar facility, and we certainly wouldn't have to go off campus or out of county to do some of our activities. And this would also enlarge the cafeteria, and it just has so many pluses. And I'm also hopeful that Mr. Clardy would be able to work his magic with this addition as he has with the Whitworth Buchanan and Oakland Middle School project. So I would certainly like for the board to discuss and consider moving forward. I asked Ms. Holton to come in case there were a member of the boards that needed refreshing, on some of the specifics as far as student populations and what's happening out in the portables.
Why do we have to go out of county to do an activity?
Well, we had a drama play, and they have a little stage in a cafeteria, and for whatever circumstances worked out that time, we had to use an adjacent high school for that play in order for the auditorium at that time for it to work out.
Couldn't we have used Rockville Middle?
Well,
We've been
if
close.
that ever happens again, just ring me up, Ms. Holman, and I'll make sure you got a place.
Well, if Rockville Middle was not built.
Well, we got Riverdale,
Oh,
we got
okay.
all kind of high school. We can work something out other
Let
than
me
that.
clear that up just a little bit. The play, the two directors were friends, the one at Unionville and the one at Eagle. And they put on Grease together.
Okay,
They started out going to do performances at Iberville and at Union, but we couldn't accommodate it. So all of them were at Union. But when we did that performance, Rockville Middle was not built in.
okay,
Let me comment.
okay.
Let me comment on what Mr. Blair said, and I appreciate his taking the interest in Eagleville. And we have said that there's a need to do an addition and do an auditorium and refurbish the cafeteria to the tune of about $8 million, as I recall, for both projects. We did separate them. I think the auditorium and classes were about 5.2, and then there was an additional 2.7 for phase 2, which was the classrooms over here. In the scheme of things, this didn't come before the new high school. The new high school was the next project that we agreed on, the board did, and which concerned me. That was my only reservation about even proceeding with this, because I don't want this, to be quite frank, as much as I want to get this, I want to make sure it doesn't interfere with our starting a high school on time, because we've already put that off for 1 year, and I think everybody knows we're in dire straits for building a high school. All that said, I didn't know how it could be funded, and after Mr. Blair and the mayor of Eagleville, Mayor Two,
Yes, sir.
when I went to Mayor Burgess, he called me and said it was, you know, they don't intend to go to market this spring to borrow any money, nor do they want to increase the property tax rate, which left them with one choice, and that would be to borrow against debt service to build, to do this project. And I think he said it was doable,
Yes, sir.
and it wouldn't impact the tax rate. I guess the question is, you know, is the commission willing to borrow against debt service to do an addition? You know, I've got conflicting emotions about it, but, I mean, if the mayor's willing to do it, the commission's willing to do it, I'm certainly willing to let them proceed.
Thank you.
We have an agreement with the university that we'll do some additional work on campus school, and that's pressing us as well. I don't know I don't remember the exact timeline when we move into the next phase.
You, Gary,
I believe it's the end of the summer of 2012. We have to be complete with that.
when do we, just out of curiosity, Doris, go ahead, Doris, I had a
Well, I'm
question.
saying if it's 2012 that we have to be complete, that's, you know, that's basically a year and a half away. And I'm wondering if, this is my thought, is if we take one phase, put this in phases like we've done some of the things over campus school, could we ask the county to fund a portion of this and say a portion of what is left to be done at campus school? You know, we've got to, I think some of the things we have to do are something about the columns on the building and pointing the brick and the windows, and if we could move to part of the campus and part of this, and then tie the finish of this in with the next high school. And I think that might be attractive to the county commission.
I think that was kind of the original intent, which, you know, we may have, you know, I know there's interest in getting this done in advance of the others. The question is, as I said a minute ago, was, you know, do we, you know, I think the mayor indicated he would be willing to do it through debt service. The question is, do we want to ask him to do it through debt service? I don't know what we've ever done out of debt service, Jeff, with respect to construction.
This would be somewhat unusual. This is a bigger, we haven't essentially borrowed against debt service, but on a shorter time frame, where it's a financing decision. We're going to the bond market in 6 months. We'll fund it for 6 months. That's the sort of borrowing we've done.
Anybody else have a question or anything?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you know, we have an opportunity to continue progressing with our construction program. I hate to see it come to a complete halt, because once you stop progress or stop the train, sometimes it's difficult to get it going again. And this project, again, being redundant, is so much smaller than so many of our other additions in the past. It just seems logical that doing this at this time might be the best time and best opportunity.
We have of course, we have a building program that we've set up. This would be kind of circumventing that, I think, if we do this. Of course, the board can do what it wants. I'm really concerned that if we do this, and then when it comes time to build a new school, Stewart's Creek or wherever it was, we took the name off of it, so I don't know where it's going to be. I'm assuming it'll be at Stewart's Creek. That the commission will say, hey, look, we just did this out at Eagleville, and then we're stuck without getting the high school built that we need built. And I'm not saying that Eagleville doesn't need their things too. They do. So, but I'm just concerned about that issue. Go ahead, Mr. Hodge.
On the campus school, how much are we talking about on this last?
Probably about $2 million or so.
But that's something we have to complete,
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah.
So, the way I see it, we start with $2 million, and whatever the projects right here, whatever the commission want to do. I think we're definitely committed to the campus debt. If we're going to get that done, they're going to have to take it out of debt service, so yes.
When were we, in order to open the high school in 2013, we would need to start the design and start spending money on that project. When, is it December?
Let's see, on 13, it'd be August 11, and then 9 months for funding and design. So,
can we have that sheet for the board tomorrow night? You know, the one I'm talking about that prioritizes and shows when the next expenditure. You got it right there, Gary.
Chairman, I was just wondering what those phases were. What was the cost of that? You said a few minutes
$8
ago.
million for both of them.
The first one, Mr. Jernigan, was, I think this one was about approximately, the auditorium in these classrooms were 5.2 million. And then that next section was, wasn't it, Gary, wasn't it 2.7? And then there was another something for the cafeteria.
Into the cafeteria, removing stage and rebuilding this area, it's about 250 in that area.
You said it, and I just didn't understand.
Go ahead, Todd.
Well, it would be ideal if we could do them all, but I'm not sure that we can approach that with the county to say that, well, let's go borrow this kind of money for these projects unless we put it to them in stages or phases. If we went to the classroom, I think we have 14 portables at Eagleville. The classroom edition is for 10 classes. So that just about wipes out the portables. It's a cheaper part of that total project. Of course, there's classrooms up there in the other, and gives them the auditorium and gives them some more classrooms. I don't know which phase I would phase it, or to do it in one complete project. But I'm still concerned that we've got a finish date with campus school, and we're not doing something this summer to help move us along. And that's going to be on top of us right away.
I think you've got it planned out with regards to financing and construction of that class. That's isn't that the final phase?
Yes, sir.
Of campus school?
It's the balance. Also, I had submitted a rough or proposed capital improvement with a window in those for this upcoming year this summer, and then the balance to be done the following summer.
Jeff, how do you borrow against debt service and not raise the tax rate?
until you have to, we fund our debt, we have a cushion in debt service for the ups and downs of the economic cycle. We would be going into that cushion. The county set a policy 2 mayor terms ago, and they set that certain percentages would be held in fund balance. Essentially, and because of the debt service, that one has the highest percentage that is held. So basically, we'd be borrowing against that reserve, but until they went out to borrow the money, it would not increase interest and principal payments. That is what the drive.
If we had a catastrophe at one of the high schools, say a tornado hit, would that come out of debt service to repair that? I mean, I'm not saying that that's never happened, but there was a tornado that just barely missed 3 schools.
The part that was not covered by insurance, that could be a possible source.
So it's a cushion for those kind of.
And yeah, if we had seen the property value increases that we're seeing in Arizona, Nevada the last few years, it's a cushion against when you go out for reappraisal, those values are down and your property tax revenues drop.
Okay. Mark.
Yeah. Gary, I didn't quite understand what he was saying about the financing for the campus, finishing up the campus school. Did you say you had a plan?
Well, basically to do this year, the coming year, the windows out of capital improvement fund. And then the money after that would, of course, have to come from the county commission to balance it.
And how much would that be, the remainder?
The remainder would be 1.2 to, 1.5.
And the blue, the first phase of Eagleville was how much?
5.2.
5.1, 5.2.
Which takes us to 6.3 or so total. Did finish that the remainder of campus and did phase 1 of Eagleville. My math correct? Is that doable within what the mayor has?
Well, but that money won't come out of debt service, that capital, he's talking about a separate fund, and I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Okay,
or not.
no, that's what I was misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So really, it's different pools of money.
I think what the attempt was, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we went to borrow for the high school, they probably would borrow for that. Wouldn't there be some money borrowed probably at that time for other projects such as completion of campus school, maybe Eagleville? All right. So when will we go to market again? Presuming that we open in 2013, it'd be the. We can start on a high school in the design with existing money that we have.
It sounds like to me then the two aren't really.
Dollars first.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right.
The two aren't really linked then. I mean,
Summer of 2011, maybe early fall. I would be my estimate of when they would want to go.
Okay. That's to open it by 2013.
I'm sorry, I read on the wrong line. Yeah.
First of 2011.
Well, design would probably cover in turn later in 2011. They probably need to go.
So mid-year 2011.
Yes, sir. They might be able to postpone it until fiscal 2012.
Assuming that we can somehow proceed with current funds and.
Yes, sir. That typically is the kind of internal borrowing we have done. Ideally, even within the building program funds, not debt service so much.
That still doesn't, I don't think that answers Mark's question.
well, my question was, based on what I just heard, I'm not sure the two projects are really linked then. I mean, I think we're wise to remember that we've got to finish up campus school, but we're talking about a completely different source of funding for Eagleville, right?
But you're going to get into your cushion here if you do that.
It could, since we don't know how the different pieces will be funded. It could wind, it essentially comes out of the same big pot at some point.
But it's not unique for us to go, say, hey, to borrow on that high school, and maybe borrow on, you know, I'm using an example, an Eagleville and finish out the campus school. You know, have three or four projects in the same borrowing period.
And non-school projects are often included. The county will do one borrowing in order to minimize the costs of issuing the bonds.
So I would have thought we would have asked for the new high school and the Eagleville project and some of those other projects we want at one time for one borrowing. That's what I would have thought. Doris, go ahead.
Right. We have some monies built into our budget. We also have some monies that comes to us from the county commission for maintenance. There's a designated 5 cents, if I remember correctly. Would we be pressured to use some of that 5 cents to do some of these projects?
We're doing a lot of good things with that 5 cents. That's the equivalent of $2 million, a little over probably. I mean, you can talk about some of the things we're doing, but I mean, with respect to meeting principals request, go ahead, Gary, talk about it a little more.
We mainly, out of that capital improvement, we do our larger projects like heating and air conditioning. All of our roofing comes out of that, or re-roofing. And I haven't brought this forward in a while, but that's a huge chunk that it takes every year just to stay on top of keeping these roofs in good shape. We could actually spend as much as $2 million a year probably to keep them in tip-top shape, and we're spending around 1.2 to 1.5 every year on that, and we end up getting, you know, 1.7 to 2.2 million for that. Windows, we've done all of our window replacement out of that, air conditioning system, roofing. We did a lot of paving out of it at first, but now we've kind of gotten that paving in a corner where we can handle it out of the maintenance budget. Just all of those major kind of projects.
I think the reason I bring that up is that money's really not going to be available because it's committed.
Right.
And so, and I'm thinking somebody's going to look at that 5 cents you get and say, well, use that. But it's really not available because it's dedicated money for just keeping 40-something buildings.
There's so many things like that they're doing now that we never could get done, Donald. Remember, we'd ask for stuff, we couldn't get it. And there's so many things that we're using that money for. And I don't want to take that if we don't have to.
And the intent with that 5 cents, the big part of the intent was the commission did not like going out to the bond market to borrow for
Right.
roof replacements and items like that.
Wayne and then Terry.
When Mayor Toon and I talked with Mayor Burgess, we were talking about the entire breadth of the project, the auditorium classroom, the stage renovation, and the additional classrooms on the other end. And at that time, he felt like it would work within that process. Certainly would not disagree that we don't need to partner something in with campus school at the same time. But I would hope that with the experience that we had with these new middle schools, that would possibly benefit us also on this construction, that the construction cost would be substantially less than what we're projecting it at this time. And I perceive that, tagging this project and that project along with the huge expense of a new high school would be a tough sell to the commission. I'm not sure that they would not rather have some small doses before we really go after the big 2,000-seat high school. I think this project, or feel like this project would be better served pursuing it now before we go after it after that bigger project.
For my part of this, I really wish this had come back through the board first before it went to Mayor Toon and Mayor Burgess and whatever. I think that it kind of went around, this was a kind of an end run, and I think it really probably should have come through the board first. Terry, go ahead.
I guess my question goes back to the campus, since the commission's not gonna go after bonds, this 1.2 we've got left to do, where's it gonna come from?
It'll eventually, I think, come as part of borrowed money, won't it, Jeff?
So,
But-
I have wondered if that may not wind up being essentially funded out of our 5 cents and the maintenance budget, because several of the commissioners were very adamant when the project was approved that they did not plan on borrowing any more money for that project. So
When-
I have to-
When's that project gotta be done?
2011, summer of 2012? Gary, when is it?
2012, the
Yeah.
end of summer 2012.
But you're saying you wouldn't go back to bond till fall of 2011, right?
That would be an estimate, yes, sir.
My thinking would be we'd have to know where the money's coming from before that time, if we're gonna have the thing done in 2012. I mean, but my point is we need to get something concrete where it's gonna come from. We've got this commitment on campus we've got to get out of the way.
Well, we got almost 30 months before we have to have it done.
I understand that. But what I'm saying, if nobody's got any money anywhere and you're not going after it till 2011, I don't know where from the sky, I guess.
No.
It'll be a bag of gold drop out of the sky.
I'm starting to agree with you.
Just print some more.
Invert your umbrella so we can catch it.
The 5 cents,
We can do magic
my
around here.
understanding, part of that goes for the principals list that we have for
Correct.
budget, right?
Yes, part of it.
I think that is a very important aspect of our maintenance program over the long haul. And I don't want to see that jeopardized.
It's the reason our schools are in the good shape that they're in right now.
Now, if there's some way that we could look at this addition, of course, you know that I feel strongly that additions to existing schools are money well spent in most cases. When I looked at this, I think the phase project there, it worked at Campus School, it might work at Eagleville as well. The cafeteria remapping and work there is certainly something that needs to be done. And if nothing else is done, that needs to be done. If we can get some other things with that, 10 classrooms or whatever in a phase, then fine. But I'd certainly think that the cafeteria is something that needs to be a high priority item. And I understand that's less than $500,000. I don't want to minimize less than $500,000 as being a lot of money, but relative to building a high school or $8 million, it is.
Well, you've got those 10 classrooms over there too that, might be something that could work on too.
Yeah.
And then connect the main part with the building program as it progresses. But that's just a suggestion too, and that was a good
I mean, I
suggestion.
think the whole project comes down, are we willing to ask the mayor and the county court to fund it out of, if it's phase, I mean, we don't have the money to do it, either phase 1 or phase 2, unless we get the county court and also the mayor to appropriate funds out of debt service. I mean, that's the whole central question. I don't think anybody would argue that it's needed. option, plan B would be, they'd have to wait probably a couple of years out until we borrow money, which means it's probably open in 2012 or 13. So that's what we gotta decide. Are we willing to, one, ask them forward it and ask them to fund it out of debt service, or do we want to wait until 2012 or 13?
Or as Mr. Jernigan suggested, do part of it, ask them to do part of it, not all of it. You're talking $8 million versus.
Even that, where would the funding come from?
Well, it still have to come out of that debt service.
I guess, wouldn't it, Jeff, pretty much anything? I mean, we don't have anything in fund balance.
We do not have it, and that is probably one of the few reserves the county faces.
Is there any money, I mean, you think there'll be anything, from our discussions, this is going to be a really, really, really tough
Yes.
year. By all measures, the toughest we've ever had. Would there be anything anywhere where we might could start with a cafeteria, you think, or as a part of a three-phase project?
Not that I'm aware of, no, sir.
Well,
Can I ask Jeff one more question?
Building program?
Tell me again about any reservations you would have about asking them to go into debt service.
Well, you know, debt service may be a source for tempering our pain countywide in the budget this year.
So technically, we could even ask for money from debt service to fund our operational budget?
So I have been told. It has not been done in the time I have been here, but.
So if we came, for an example, this happens quite regularly. If we came up needing money to make payroll and didn't have it, would that come out of debt service?
Not normally, it wouldn't. Normally.
But I mean, if you didn't have anywhere else to take it?
Well, on the payroll issue, you would, what has happened, again, this is before my time here, we were concerned about it one year when the BEP payment was late. We could do at that point a revenue anticipation note, but that tends to be December before the property tax receipts start hitting. Once they hit, we should be all right for the rest of that fiscal year and have a cushion for starting the next.
I'm just thinking $8 million is a lot of money. And I don't begrudge Eagle with getting anything. But, you know, I'd rather do the phase thing than the whole thing. I'd like to do the whole thing, but I'm afraid what happens if we get caught in the middle of something and we don't have any money? And as tight as the budget's going to be, I think that's a possibility. But the board can do what it wishes. Any other questions? Those.
But we, in a way, we haven't addressed the Wayne's comments, and that being, are we going to have a plan? Do we need to put our collective thoughts together and say, well, this is what we would like to do, or do we need to go to our director and the staff and ask them for their input, draw up some kind of proposal?
Well, there is a plan here. It just is a matter of whether they want to change it or how to change it.
Deviating from what we have planned in the past.
I think we ought to have some suggestion from the director and the staff. I mean, and I don't know what they could say other than they want to do part of it or all of it or none of it.
I suggest we go to item 10 on the agenda.
I think we really need for them to take a moment and look at this. It's going to take more than a moment, but they need to look at this and come to us with some recommendation on it.
I know 2.8 million is a lot more than 8 million. I mean, it's a lot less than 8 million. That's 5 million less, actually, 5.2 million less. And that might be doable somehow, but 8 million is going to be difficult. And I just don't want county commissioners to say, yeah, okay, let's do this, and then turn around a year and a half from now and say, well, we can't start those new high schools because we did this project out here.
I think it's probably an issue. Nobody wants to say no to it, including the mayor, me, and anyone. It's a little scary. I mean, obviously Jeff feels the same way about going into debt services. The only concern I got, otherwise I'd say go ahead, but maybe we could connect with Lisa and the mayor tomorrow and talk to them a little bit and kind of pick their brains again and come back with pursuant to what Mr.
Mark?
Dar said.
Yeah, I just think if we have a chance to do part of this project now, we ought to go ahead and do it. I mean, I think the process has not been perfect here, of how it all came about. And we all agree that the high school is our top priority, but there's no way to predict what the commission's gonna do on
No, that's
the
true.
high school.
That's
you
true.
know.
They may start and they not do it
They
anyway.
might not do it anyway, they might do it regardless, and I just don't.
Let me
To
get,
some, well, I'm not quite done.
Well,
To some degree, they're tied together, but on the other hand, the future's so uncertain on the high school. Does it boil down to we can do this project, or at least part of it now, or not? And if we can do it, we should try.
I wasn't trying to put you off.
Oh,
I just had too many hands up at the same
Okay.
time. I was trying to put everybody.
Okay.
Terry first.
No, I just gonna make a comment in regards to what you said, that 2.8 on the 10 classrooms, if I'm not mistaken, was your first item on that list anyhow, planned to do. And, I think all we're talking about, possibly moving it up. I think, what is 2011 on there? Possibly bumping it up, which I'm like everybody else. I wouldn't have a problem at all doing that if the commission would,
That would be
just
the 2.8 and that would be the cafeteria too. I think that would include the cafeteria.
Whatever we had addressed
Yeah.
on this, what's on the sheet, and I think you had 5.5 later to catch all the rest of it.
Grant.
I would recommend that we go ahead and present this to the commission along this last comments you had, and just see what they say. And this, that's the starting point. We'll find out pretty quick if that's it. But if we don't ever ask, we won't really know. 'Cause a lot of times they don't solicit a lot of stuff, and sometimes they don't even respond when we ask them. Certainly, I think that's what we need to do.
Doris, did you have another?
I don't want to pressure the director and his folks to think they've got to come back with an answer tomorrow night, because it'll take them several days to get some information together, and either he comes up with a motion to do something or a motion not to do.
Jeff, did you have something to say?
Just, at the last budget committee meeting, Lisa's most recent projection of where the school board sales tax revenue, that we could be 2.5 million under. And that, when we are short in a budgeted revenue, that reduces our fund balance. We are facing a serious situation this year, and probably even more so in budgeting for next year.
See, we got some costs we don't generally have to deal with. I don't want to get into the budget, but we're talking as many as 130 new teachers that we're going to have to find a way to whittle down. Several new buses. Our contribution to retirement's going up to the tune of what? 2 to 3 million, maybe more.
The classified wound up not going up as much, so
But anyway, a substantial increase, and all that said, it's really scary. I mean, it's just scary. But anyway, let's do what Mr. Dar said and talk to the mayor and talk to Lisa, and we'll see if, maybe we can present it as, and I'm just talking out loud and thinking out loud, but, as part of a phase-in, maybe like Mr. Hodge said, maybe we do this first, do that the following year. And Dr. Bird said, but get something going. So, anyway, we'll come back either tomorrow, we'll try to come back tomorrow night with some thoughts.
Any more comments? Okay, let's move on. 10.
Special course requests. Instruction Department is requesting permission to make an application to offer credit for special courses under the following guidelines. Rule 0520-1-3-.05-2A. Local school system may offer special courses not listed in 520-1-3-.06 on an experimental basis. Commissioner of Education must approve each course in the advance of each year. After 3 years, the course may become a permanent part of the local school program upon approval by the State Board of Education. I recommend that you approve Rutherford County to make application for the following courses to be offered named schools in 2010, 2011, etymology, first year Central and Smyrna High School. Mythology, first year at Central and Smyrna High School, second year Laverne High. ACT Prep, first year Central and Holloway. Self-advocacy, second year Laverne High. Focus on adulthood, second year Laverne High. National Merit Prep, second year at all the following schools: Blackman, Laverne, Oakland, Riverdale, Siegel, and Smyrna. Native American History, first year Holloway. Modern Literature, first year Central. Academic Pathway Internship, first year at the following schools: Blackman, Laverne, Oakland, Riverdale, Siegel, and Smyrna. Business Basics, second year Blackman, first year at Holloway, Oakland, Riverdale, Siegel, and Smyrna. Digital Home Technology Integrator, third year Blackman. Electronic Media Installation, third year Blackman High. Forensic Science Investigations, third year Eagleville and Laverne, second year Riverdale and Siegel, first year Oakland. High School 101, third year at Riverdale and Smyrna, second year Blackman, Laverne, Oakland, Siegel, first year Central and Holloway. And also Marketing, Hospitality, and Mass Communications Exploration, third year Request Blackman. Marketing, Hospitality, Mass Communication Senior Project, third year Blackman. And Project Lead the Way, Biomedical Sciences, first year Central, Magnet.
Any questions, discussion on that? Doris?
Sorry. What, when you add these courses, what do they add to our overall cost? Do they bring you teachers? Do they, new equipment?
I mean, if you can meet the pupil-teacher ratio, they don't bring much new cost. I mean, you still struggle with, you offer courses that kids gotta have, one for remediation and enrichment, knowing it's a little more expensive, but knowing at the same time it benefits these guys. And, you know, historically, we've tried to do that, to challenge kids in schools. So probably a little more cost. I will say, Mr. Odom and I got a meeting, is it tomorrow with the high school principals? Thursday? To try to find ways to increase pupil-teacher ratio and cut the number of teachers in high schools. You know, I don't, might as well let that cat out of the bag in order to save positions. But, you know, these are needed courses. Don, you want to comment on that?
Several of those are career technical education, you can see. Some of them up there are some of the special ed that we had a number of years ago. Students that stayed at 23 or go through or some other things. We added those modeled after Chattanooga. Most of the things that you have, look around other places, you see what seems to be working and try to pull some of that in. Spectrum teachers are teaching that one on National Merit Prep. You know, that's very important to your students, and they're bringing that in some of their Spectrum work with high school students. So we look around and consider the possibilities. A lot of times things we offer wind up in the state curriculum at some point.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
is there some opportunity for some of the courses that we're teaching now to be dropped in order to, but it's not successful, and to allow for this? Or are these additional?
Typically, we do not use, when you write this, you write in there who will be teaching it, what their certification is. We pick people we already have in position and add, you know, their certification in that area to teach one of these courses. You know, business basics, your business teacher. So you're not adding a new person when you see this. But career and technical education is forever changing. I mean, you know, from the years where we used to have the wood shops and the metal shops, and now it's forensic science and it's criminal justice, it's virtual enterprise. I mean, it just continually reinvents itself.
But you have a certain capacity, you obviously have to work within that capacity, so there is some latitude to work within that?
Yeah, some are disappearing. For instance, agriculture, probably the hottest thing in agriculture now, there's two things. One of them is veterinary science is a new thing on the block, and the other with the horticulture. It's just reinvented itself in replacing older courses.
So that's what some of these are then?
That's what this is.
Okay.
Anything else?
It's a minimum size class. It's a minimum size class. Minimum.
I
I'm sorry, there's a minimum enrollment per class to make, isn't it?
Well, you won't have,
Yeah.
Career Tech was 20, basically, but we may have a little less than that, but you still have to maintain that ratio.
another question. All right, 11.
11 courses offered for credit in grades 9 and 12. Board of Education Policy 4.201 states in part, a listing of courses offered for credit in grades 9 through 12 will be approved annually by the board. Note, the Tennessee Department of Education has notified the system that a new new list of course titles and course numbers will not be released until at least February the 15th. There may be some course name adjustments when updated state information is received. And we're going to recommend that you approve the list of courses for credit in Rutherford County grades 9 and 12 for 2010-11 as presented.
Question? Discussion? 12.
12, proposal to participate in a class size reduction research study. Beginning in 1985, Tennessee conducted a Project STAR study that examined how class size influenced student performance in grades K through 3 and beyond. Rutherford County Schools has been approached by Heroes Incorporated about our willingness to participate in another class size study for grades 4th and 5th, beginning in the 2010-2011 school year. The United States Department of Education grant through Heroes will provide funding for the study over a 2-year period with grade 4 the first year and grade 5 the second year. The plan is to compare student performance for students in the state mandated pupil-teacher ratio of 1:25 to other classes with 1:14 through 1:17 enrolled students. The grant will cover all teacher salaries and benefits needed to reduce the pupil-teacher ratio would be covered by the grant funds. Cost for additional classroom space will be paid through the grant, which means if we need portables, they'll lease them. They'll pay for setting them up. Technology and teacher materials needed to mirror resources in the traditional 1:25 ratio class would be covered by the grant. They'll set all additional rooms with needed technology equipment. When they leave, we keep it, it's my understanding. Mobile and Baldwin counties in Alabama have already signed to participate in the study, and the 2 school systems in Tennessee are being considered. And we're going to request that you allow us to do that. But Linda Pritchard's here, Mr. Pritchard and Mr. Odom, myself, Mr. Sandvig all met with the representative from Heroes Incorporated. At the end of the day, what's going to transpire in every school in the county, with the exception of I think the 2 magnet schools and also Campus School, is that beginning in the 4th grade, they'll reduce every 4th grade classroom in the county to roughly 1 to 15, 1 to 16, 1 to 17, whereas now they would be anywhere from 1 to 23 to 1 to 25. Okay. At the conclusion of that year, those kids obviously we anticipate will be promoted to the 5th grade, and they would do the same thing at the 5th grade, reducing the number from 1 to 25 to 1 to roughly 1 to 15. Now, you know, also any kind of data that's received pertaining to that, we would be privy to. We've told them it's going to take some portables in some of these schools. You know, we don't have the space, and they said that's not an issue. It's a really large grant. They'll provide those portables, as I said, the setup, all the material associated with with teacher needs, as I said, technology. They will also pay any benefit, pay the teacher salary. After 2 years, we feel like, as fast as we grow, we'll be able to absorb those teachers into the curriculum. There won't be any kind of, I think we're talking about, 27 positions maybe, something like that. And we'll be able to absorb those positions. We'll have trained teachers, we'll have effective teachers as a result of this program. So, we think it's really a silver lining for us to have this opportunity. Now, Linda, do you want to add anything to what I said, or did I summarize it?
You did a great job, Mr. Gill.
Okay.
If you remember the STAR study, the national study that helped to reduce class size all over the nation, well, this is phase 2. So it's a wonderful opportunity and they
to come and work with us. They will pay for, I mean, it's $100 million. So it is a lot of money. So they're going to pay for everything. And it will ultimately help increase our test scores. So that's another big plus. So that it's just a fabulous opportunity, and Mr. Bill's right, it'd be hard for us to turn that down.
I think so too. Grant?
I was gonna say, and that reinforces it, it's just like a win-win situation, and obviously, if things, the results don't come out, then we obviously have no obligation to go further, but I feel like we obviously have a situation here where we just can't afford to turn it back on this. I think it's a compliment that our system was one of the first ones that were asked on this. Don't you think that would be considered a compliment?
I do.
It is a compliment to our system. They've worked with us before with hands-on science.
I know they have.
And they wanted particularly to work with Rutherford County because they said to me, it's a high-quality school system, and we know that, and that's why we want to work with Rutherford County.
Good deal. Sounds good to me. Any other discussion or questions? Okay.
13, facilities. Oakland Middle School architectural fee. Binkley Garcia Architecture has submitted a request for a fee increase on Oakland Middle School due to changes in documents initiated by the permitting process. The increase also covered the consulting engineering firms that were involved in the changes. Rutherford County School Board forwarded a request for funding to the Rutherford County Commission for these costs as it was approved. Total extra design fee cost for Oakland Middle School is $73,705. We're recommending that you approve a request for Binkley Garcia Architecture in the amount of $73,705 for design changes to Oakland Middle School.
Grant?
I can't let this go. Are we going to pass? Should we just pass this on to the city of Murfreesboro for most of these changes?
Be careful, you'll be chastised on the headlines.
Well, you know, we've been chastised before, so that's no problem.
A good point, Mr. Kelly. Anyone else have a comment? Anybody else want to dive in there?
I'll take the hit.
Go ahead, B.
Oakland Middle School change orders. R.G. Anderson Construction has submitted change order 1 and change order 2 for changes to work on Oakland Middle School due to the permitting process. Change order 1 is in the amount of $128,245, and change order 2 is in the amount of $171,520. Rutherford County School Board has previously approved the itemized list of the changes and forwarded them along to the Rutherford County Commission for approval. The Commission has approved the funding for these changes. Recommend that we approve change order 1 in the amount of $128,245 and change order 2 in the amount of $171,520, totaling $299,765 for extra work on Oakland Middle School to R.G. Anderson.
Questions, discussion?
Now, we did have a couple $100,000 contingency in both those school accounts, didn't we, Mr. Clardy?
Yeah.
And that's going to be spent up too, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
C.
Whitworth County Middle School architecture fee. Binkley Garcia Architects submitted a request for a fee increase on Whitworth County Middle School due to changes in documents initiated by the permitting process. The increase also covered the consulting engineering firms that were involved in the changes. Rutherford County School Board forwarded a request for funding to the Rutherford County Commission for a cost. It was approved. Total design fee cost is $77,265. Recommended you approve request for Binkley Garcia Architecture in the amount of $77,265 for design changes to Whitworth County Middle School.
Question, discussion? D.
D, Whitworth County Middle School change order. Robert Biskin has submitted change order 1 for changes to work on the Whitworth County Middle School due to permitting process. Change order 1 is the amount of $150,000. The Rutherford County School Board has seen an itemized list of charges and forwarded them along to the Rutherford County Commission for approval and funding. The Commission has approved funding for these changes. Recommend that you approve change order 1 in the amount of $150,000 for extra work on Whitworth County Middle School, Robert Biskin Construction.
Questions, discussion? E.
E, McFadden School of Excellence renovation bid. Bids were received for the McFadden School of Excellence renovations at 2 p.m. on February 11, 2010 at the Central Office Boardroom from 10 construction companies. Anticipated companies were as follows: C.D. Steger Construction, R.G. Anderson, Robert Biskin, Commercial Industrial Construction, Barrett and Dowdle Construction, George A. Clanton Construction, RCR Building Corporation, Southeast Contractors, Brad Slater Construction, and Romac. Southeast Contractors were successful with the lowest best bid at $394,206. Recommend that you award the McFadden School of Excellence renovation project to Southeast Contractors for the lowest and best overall bid of $394,206.
Questions, discussion? Grant?
If we had any bids from Southeast before, I just don't recall it now. Or has it been recent, not been recent?
Yeah, bid, on our Central Magnet School from them, we have checked references. They're currently working at Austin P and somewhere else, and they have some great references, so.
Where are the headquarters? You know? If you don't have it, twice, okay.
I don't know right off my head, but, they're in Brentwood, I'm sorry. Brentwood.
Okay.
Forrest?
Will permits be required?
Well, we got 2 or 3 projects coming up. One, the renovation at Central. And we've got this. I guess
We keep talking about, at some point, making an issue.
We need to test one of them, though.
At some point, the board's gonna step up and say, is this the right one to do it? And I'm basically asking that question. Because we've got Siegel in addition there, that's a possibility, it'd be a little more expensive. We've got this one. We got to go on with Central, we just, whatever.
You know my feelings, but I think most of the board.
Go ahead, Terry.
I guess my question, I mean, McFadden's, this little dollar amount here sounds like a good one to me. My question to Mr. Reed is, what's his opinion?
Whatever you want to take up that issue, it's one we can raise. So McFadden looks like an appropriate project to raise it on. If the board is inclined to do it, it may delay the project for a while. So
It would be a declaratory judgment action?
it would be.
As you've said before, you have to do it before we get started with the project. That's what happened last time, that we almost horsed out of the barn before we tried to, but this is the time to do it, you're saying, right? It might be a good one to do then.
With any of these projects, there would be opportunities there to do it, so long as they're in the city limits. So, you know, McFadden might be appropriate to do it with.
If I tell, I got a question, but if you would, hang on, Jeff. Gary, you want to say something pertaining to that?
I just want to say that, the renovations at McFadden are not very extensive. They're mainly aesthetic. I think as a matter of fact, the fire marshal, didn't even want to review the plan. So I think Central might be the best tool if you want to test it.
But like Mr. Reed said, it might delay opening Central, which we'd have a lot to lose if that were to happen.
What about Siegel? When's that one come up?
That's down the pike.
The thing is, the more of them you do, then it becomes past practice, doesn't it?
But see, we didn't permit Oakland or Riverdale additions. I mean, so they basically are kind of picking and choosing what they require we permit.
Well, I think now that we've paid for one, they probably can do is make us do them all. Maybe.
Yeah, it's never an ideal time, so, you know, it's like pick your poison on which one you want to do it with.
But the scope of the work, does that, I mean, Gary seems to imply that the scope of the work might affect what makes a good test case. I mean, do you see that from a legal standpoint?
The scope of the work definitely will impact the case, yes. So it'd be a lot of considerations go in there. Probably we'd want to sit down with staff and look at each one of those projects before we came back and gave you a recommendation. So if the board's inclined to go that direction, we need to talk with staff pretty extensively before we decide which one of these projects to do that on.
It'd be risky business to do anything at Central, I think. I mean, like, first, how long does it take to get a declaratory judgment? I mean, would they consider time restraints?
I mean, when you get tied up in these things, it could take it could take a year or more. So if it goes to appeals, it could be a couple of years. So you're looking at potential long-term delays with respect to projects. So if you're going to choose to do this with a project, it needs to be one that is not critical to be opened by a certain date.
Probably Siegel Edition would be the best one. But they may not require that we permit that anyway. Like an addition at Siegel, if we're just adding 12 classrooms. I mean, they haven't had a tendency to make us permit those kind of things, have they?
They made us permit the building, and it's on record.
Which building?
At Siegel. Siegel permitted the school was.
Oh, yeah. But they did in the Oakland Riverdale additions. So why would they have us permit 12 classroom addition at Siegel?
They weren't happy that we didn't.
They wanted us to do Oakland and Riverdale, we just didn't do it.
Some of it comes into is to what extent you're using services such as sewer and things like that, electric service and things like that. That factors into these projects. So each one of those will have to be kind of looked at.
And that's another thing. There's a misconception that we don't pay sewer or water connections and all that. And in fact, we do. I know we pay a sewer connection. Also, don't we pay $8 a student to tie into for sewer use, for capacity use? What else? What other kind of fees do we pay with respect to water, sewer?
I think that's sewer impact fee.
Jeff, you remember?
Those are the sorts of ones I remember.
I mean, we pay what any other consumer would pay.
That's correct.
So I mean, I think that.
But you're paying tap fees, impact fees,
yeah,
review fees,
right,
all those sort of things.
Why don't y'all look at them and see what you think?
Okay.
Makes sense. Any other discussion on that?
We can't do Central. I just can't see jeopardizing that. That's all we went through to get that. Problem is, of course, every project, there's a reason why we can't do it, so I understand that.
Yep.
Too, but. Anyway, that's what I think.
Looks like McFadden might be one of those projects where that you don't get them. And what are you jeopardizing if you don't get them? You already got electricity, you already got water there and sewer. Are they gonna cut it off, or what's the alternative here?
I would think that since we have sewer and water, we would not be risking a lot, but if we tied up in court, then that'd be different. And we had not really planned on purchasing from
Well, if we wasn't planning on it, then I hadn't heard anything here tonight that would indicate you need to change your mind.
I'm with you.
Go with it. All right, let's go on to financial matters.
Financial matters. Rutherford County Schools Lighting Management System. In October of '09, the school board meeting, the following request was forwarded to the county commission to approve the Excel Energy Group $2,337,515 proposal for occupancy sensors contingent on state approval of the system's Efficient Schools Initiative grant of $741,480 and the county commission's approval of funding the $1,596,035 balance. state has approved our grant, but the loan documents for the program will not be available for 5 to 7 more months. We're asking to forward to the commission the 7-year lease purchase plan by Mr. Croon firm that they prepared. The financing terms of the $2,337,550 proposal match the terms that were approved in October. This would be temporary funding until the loan through the state are ready. $741,480 in Energy Efficient Schools Initiative grant, which is free money to the school system. We don't pay any of that back. $500,000 at 0% for 7 years, and $1,096,035 at 3% for 7 years. The county commission will, of course, make the final financing decision, and we're going to recommend that you do that. It's already been through health ed.
The concept.
The concept, yeah. I think at the end of the day, we decided it would cost us $60,000
a year was the net of the savings.
Yeah. But it cost us $60,000 a month, and the savings would be $55,000 per month.
It would cost them $5,000 a month for a total of $60,000 a year.
Okay.
The savings.
Any questions, discussion? Go to summer school.
Summer school calendar. Rutherford County will be offering a system-wide summer school program at Blackman Middle, Smyrna Middle, Laverne High, and Siegel High based upon student enrollment. Minimum enrollment of 60 students per site will be required. We're recommending that you approve the 2010 Rutherford County summer school calendar as presented, with tuition of $100 for middle school, $100 per half, 1 credit for high school, $200 for driver ed. I think that's what we charged last year, isn't it?
Question?
Where were the last year?
We rotate them. You remember, Mr. Odom, where we had it last year?
I'll say Blackman High School. We rotate the 3 on that end, and the 3 on this end, which is Oakland and Riverdale, and Siegel rotation, and Smyrna and Blackman and rotation. So every 3 years it's rotating around.
Any questions? General discussion of the board. All minds at ease. Jerry.
Quick to grab that gavel, weren't you?
He's wanting his mind to be at ease.